Brady says you're the best he's got, which is what I need. As you know, the election is in 1 week. We're going to be affecting the outcome.
You're doing it wrong.
You ever ask at the farm if something's real?
We were hired by Trellit to try to take Newbomb down. This tape changed everything.
You are nothing. Renko is only using you.
Democracy in action. There's no thinking through the issues, deliberation, weighing the pros and cons. People think with their gut. They're swayed by the latest headline, the strongest titillation.
Well, maybe the gut knows when something's true.
Thank you for joining us on the Downey Cut. My next guest is a screenwriter with 30 plus years of experience and has written dozens of scripts that has been placed in contests and optioned for development. He has a feature film, Outrage, on Amazon and publications in Clarksworld. He continues to write and develop new projects while splitting his time between Los Angeles and Palm Springs. Please welcome Brady Nelson to the Downey Cut.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Super quick correction, 15 years of experience. If I had 30 years, I would have been like, I'd have been cranking stuff out when I was in like 4th grade, which, hey, I mean, if you can do that, power to you.
I was going to ask you, I'm like, 30 years? Wow, you look so young.
You know, it's just diet and exercise. No, yeah, no.
Yeah, it can happen.
Yeah, I mean, hey,
okay.
There's that Brian Johnson guy.
That's awesome.
Doing it. So
that's clickbait right there. 30 years, how to look like this guy. That's what it is. That's what we're gonna do. So now I might call you Bradley. I don't know
just
why.
No Brody, please.
Call you Brady.
That's all I ask.
Noted. So we have Palm Springs, we have Los Angeles. Tell us, how did your journey start? First of all, let me just back up a little bit. What came first, directing or writing?
Writing for sure. Writing. Okay. Yeah. But I was always interested in directing. It just was really daunting, you know? Like writing, you can you can just work on a laptop. You can work anywhere. You don't even need a laptop. You can go the old route and just, handwrite it, which I've tried to do. I know there's famous writers that swear by that, but I get carpal tunnel in like 5 seconds, so I just
Why do they swear by it?
Their philosophy, they're like very famous. I think Cormac McCarthy is one who says that, I think Tarantino, going on a more kind of screenwriter route, he says he always writes his first drafts in a notebook. And I guess there's just something seemingly more pure about it, or I don't know. I have friends too who work that way. I've tried it because they swear by it, but I don't know. I'm a sucker for a laptop.
All right, so I'm not trying to be ageist, but
no, please.
When you start writing, obviously, if there's no computer typewriter around, you're going to start writing, right? It's hard to carry a typewriter everywhere you go.
Totally.
But when you come into the future and there's iPads, Chromebooks, and all these tablets and stuff, I guess nowadays the question, I think I've heard actors say the same thing. It's if they start writing out, they handwrite their lines, they'll get it better for whatever reason. So I was just kind of curious about where does that come from versus typing. I type, but but let's go back to you. How did your journey start? What brought you to this?
Yeah, wow. Well, I loved it when I was a kid. I loved movies. I loved reading science fiction books and stuff. I think in that bio I sent you, it's almost an apocryphal story even to myself because I was so young, but I saw Aliens at a not recommended young age. And other than being totally terrified, I was also enthralled and just knew, I loved it. I wanted to know how such a thing could be done. And I wanted to make something like that myself. And went to film school. And then after that, I'm from
Right.
Los Angeles, so coming back here, made sense both ways, and just been trying to do my thing ever since.
Interesting. What? So it was aliens that kind of captured the imagination, but what? Because there's a lot of us that when we start into the film industry, it is always a film that inspires us. But a lot of people will say, "I want to make that," or "I want to be in that." What caused you to go, "I want to write"?
I think it was just I was attracted. I think some people are attracted immediately to the image, like they love how things look and they want to learn how to do that. Other people are attracted to the performances, which somewhat is interesting to me. But the first thing I was attracted to was just the story and like how does someone go about kind of that was what hit me most or what stuck with me, right? And so I didn't know, I thought directors just did it all. I thought that was the job. Like you just, when I was like a little kid, it just like Athena from Zeus's head or something, it just like pops out. I didn't understand. I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about all the things that went into making a movie, but obviously learned that over the years and realized that that was what most interested me and was also most accessible. And so that's just what I gravitated to. And it also, I felt like was just such a key thing. Like I felt like, you know, I felt like I wasn't alone when it came to feeling that way about movies or anything really. Like the story is really what sticks with you. As beautiful as the imagery might be, or as great a performance as someone gives, if the story and it's something doesn't stick with you, yeah, it's like cotton candy or something. You just sort of forget it, right? It doesn't have real power. And so I wanted to make stuff that have, or I want to make stuff that has real power.
Yeah. That, and I think it's kind of like a superpower if you think about it, because you are a writer. You create the worlds, you create the characters, you create the story, and I think a lot of us kind of envy that because many of us are like, okay, I got to write. I mean, I wrote my first script like 2 years ago, and that was daunting. But you've been at this and you've honed your skills. We're gonna talk more about that in
Sure.
detail. But kudos to you for jumping in there and being able and having that authority to really just kind of lay it out there and go, "This is what I envision." And
Yeah.
and I see that you're also a director too. So you've actually made your films, and I think that's awesome.
Thanks.
The Let me ask you this: being a
Hmm.
director from that perspective and seeing the films, what qualities or skills do you believe set an exceptional actor apart from the rest?
Wow. Man, that's tough because I feel like there's a lot of different ways to come at acting, and I think any of them can work. Like, uh, there's actors who are really great at taking notes and they kind of need notes. They need it to be like a back and forth process. Um, and in that case, the ability to listen to notes and kind of take them in and respond and adapt to what feedback you're getting from the director is key. But then there's other actors who just sort of like they're doing their thing and you don't want to stay like my job is to not stand in their way. Right? As long as like the train is going to where I want it to go, they're going to do it their way and they're going to do it in a way I probably that I if as long as I see that it fits what the story is and what the vision is, they're bringing something to it I might not have even thought to do, and I just need to kind of like let the magic happen, right? So, it depends, I think, on how the actor approaches the craft, right? And as a director, I think you just want to kind of empathize with them on that level and know where they're coming from so you can do what works for them instead of trying to force your way of doing things on it. Does that make sense?
I yeah, I assume you're casting your
Mm-hmm.
films too,
Yeah.
right? So when you're seeing and you're doing auditions, are you picking out people or are you doing auditions?
I did a bit of both. I did pick out a lot of people. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into like with Outrage, the whole the production process for that one. But I've
Yeah.
always cast my stuff, and usually, with shorter things like short films or the series I did, it was a bit of casting, but mostly it was friends recommending someone to me, and that's who I would use. But with this, I did cast it, and it was a bit. I threw out lines, you could say, and then just got a flood of um, applications, I guess, or submissions. Is the better word for it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to get through that list was daunting, and I had to do auditions and make sure that and casting.
Okay.
I mean, really, like I think I don't know what wizened film sage said this at some point, but that directing is 80% casting. But whoever said it is like dead on in my experience. I mean, if you cast the roles really well, for the most part, you've done so much of the work already. Like you have a lot to fall back on if you just know they sort of naturally get the role.
Interesting. So let's look into that in more detail. What kind of pops out when it comes to this is for the actors who are looking to get into production and something like that.
Sure.
What was it that kind of highlighted you and went, oh, this is the person? Like based on the role? Was it based on their ability? Was it that you didn't have to work? Like they seemed like they fit the character right then and
Well,
there?
so the tough thing is that, I mean, for me in this, it was that. I mean, I was able to narrow down to a few actors for each role based on just how they seem to fit. I mean, so when they submitted, it was through this service called Breakdown Services, and I could see sort of I had provided like a scene for each of them, for each of the characters, and so I could see them read it and get some sense of like, okay, is this sort of how I see the character? Are they bringing anything that extra that I like, that kind of thing? Um, and so a lot of it really was just like, do you sort of fit the character or not? I mean, there were people who were just obviously sort of, they're probably just spamming every role they can, and I get that because, I mean, especially last year after the strikes, I think people were just so hungry for work that they were just throwing their hat in for anything. But the truth is, I think if I was an actor, I would really try to pay attention to whether or not I have something special to bring to this role if I really think I would fit in it. Like, can I see the character? Do I feel like I could be this person, on screen sort of almost half naturally and then play with it and make it interesting once I'm in, because I think a lot of casting, at least in my experience, I mean, I'm not a casting director, but in my experience, that was a big part of it, was like, how much do you just fit the role? And I mean, there's not a lot of advice to give on that, except to just try to be realistic about that and commit as an actor to like going for the ones you really feel, instead of just sort of, because if I'm getting a lot that just clearly don't fit, I'm just not, I'm not going to look at that. And I think if you're an actor, that will get dispiriting because you just think, oh, no one's looking at my stuff. But I think if you target it more seriously, that'll help a lot.
Did you only look at reels or auditions? I should say, did you only look at auditions or did you look at reels?
So I looked at reels, and then with the ones that I was really thinking of going with, I had them audition. Yeah. So It was reels first, then I reached out to people and set a time to do auditions with them, and then based on those auditions, went with who I went with. Yeah.
So you had mentioned the production. Let's talk about the production. Outrage, the production. What was the timeline like from start? You wrote the script. How far or what were the steps to get that thing rolling for you? And then how long was that production process?
Well, pretty wild, which, is pretty standard also for where we're at. Probably films in general, but especially indie films. I'll say, I mean, to start a little, there's sort of a prologue, I guess, for the actual working on it, which is just the research. I mean, I just read a lot, and I was reading, it's a messed up, this is not going to blow anyone's mind. It's a pretty messed up media political landscape right now. And that a lot of that has interested me for years, so I've just been reading about journalism and, disinformation and how people do this and that. And there's a lot of great material on that I had just sort of over the years been reading out of just general interest. But in like October of 23, I read this book by Ryan Holiday called Trust Me, I'm Lying. Ryan Holiday is this, he now does sort of podcasts on like stoicism and stuff and releases these books about Marcus Aurelius and everything. But he actually started as this marketer for American Eagle, where he employed all these kind of really like media manipulation methods to promote his clients, including American Eagle. And in this book, he sort of details how he did that, and how kind of corrupt, in a sense, the blogs and, newspapers and all these media outlets really are. And the more I was reading about it, he goes into some detail about like how they do that and the methods. And it just popped in my head, the idea of like, well, I mean, it was an election year too. So I'm reading this book. I'm sort of thinking about how obviously this applies in an election year. And it just occurred to me, like, you wouldn't need more than kind of a couple savvy people in a room who knew how to do this and sort of a strategy to try and swing an election. And the more I thought, characters just started sort of forming in my mind. And I got really excited because I've been writing for years and I've had the bad, well, from a perspective, bad habit of like writing really expensive stuff. I write like big stuff often. It's not always easy to come up with an idea that you feel like you could actually do yourself. But this felt like it could be, because it's really just people in a room, and they're doing something huge, but it makes sense that they would just sort of be in this spare office, right? And doing shady stuff. And so I ran it by my friend and business partner, Neil, who, has been something of a, I don't know, business advisor, kind of de facto manager. And he liked it. And so I said, okay, I'm going to take a shot at this. And I wrote a draft in like a couple weeks in January and sent it to him. And Neil used to be a journalist in DC. He used to work for, I forget what it was called, but he worked for an outlet there. And, he kind of knew that world, and he liked it a lot. And I was like, let's just make it. I'm going to do it.
That's a validation
Yeah,
right there.
Exactly. I know, it was great. Especially after 2 weeks. And, I was like, I think we can do this with iPhones. I'm just going to, we'll get whatever actors. I'll make it for $1,000. And I think he knew at the time, like, man, that's probably not going to happen. But I was gunning for that. And actually, I'm lucky enough. I mean, now I'm sort of, I'll just slide into the whole production part of it. I'm friends actually with a DP, Dylan. I've known him since high school, and he's great. He's like in the union. And when I had told him the idea at his New Year's party, and then when I had the script, he really wanted to meet, and he's the one who really convinced me. Like, hey, I've got this nice Nikon camera. Like, we can actually we don't need to shoot it on an iPhone. You can get like real actors. So he convinced me pretty easily, admittedly, to go for it. And we found the office, he and I, and Neil and I financed the thing. And then it was really just a kind of a whirlwind. We were really aiming to release before the election. So I had it in my head, like, we want to get it out, let's have this thing hit in like October when it's peak craziness, and maybe that'll get some buzz going for the movie and stuff. So I just put us all on this like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride kind of thing, where we're just going to really go for it. And we ended up shooting. So I wrote the script in January and we shot at the end of February last year. So it's this on this date last year. This date last year didn't exist, but you know what I mean? Around this time, we were neck deep on set shooting the thing. We shot it in 6 days. And 6 days, yeah, which I'll say works for this, because I mean, it's still an insane schedule, but worked for it because we have so much going on computer screens, because they have to be emailing people and reading headlines, and so a lot of it was actually going to be done in post, and I kept us on the crazy ride. So going into the summer, I had really high hopes. I was like, let's aim it at big festivals, Toronto, Venice. I saw Venice has like a small movie section where like littler stuff can get in, and I was like, we can maybe make that. Let's go for it. And since I was doing a lot of it myself, I mean, I edited it myself. I ended up doing a lot of the.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I was like, you're the one man one-stop shop.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and we can talk about this later, but I think the spirit of just sort of like if a man can do it, like you can do it. Like if one man can do it, you can do it. Like just go for it. And editing software now is so available. I mean, DaVinci Resolve is free, right? And now not super buggy. And I cut on. Yeah, that used to be a problem. I don't know if anyone will remember that, but Premiere is a little pricey, kind of. But I really like Premiere, so that's what I cut it on. And I lucky enough, I have a friend who's a working VFX guy, and so some of the trickier VFX stuff he handled, and otherwise it was me and this guy I hired on Fiverr. And then I got to say, a good college friend, Alex, is a sound designer, and he just did like an incredible job, because a lot of the movie is, people listening to stuff on headphones and, stuff like that. And that took a long time because he had a lot of work he had to do. It took longer than I thought it would. There's a lot of computer noises and stuff, people typing, and you think like, oh, that'll be easy, but not if you want it to sound good. He kind of had to craft this thing from the ground up in a lot of ways. And then he and I both did the music. Luckily enough,
You're a musician?
Well, kind of. Yeah, I mean, I have a background in it. I grew up playing piano and learned music theory when I was a little kid, and I really like making music. I just don't usually do it. I just don't have the time, or I have other projects, writing projects and stuff. I don't get to it, but so it's actually kind of fun for me to do it. And I really like scores. I'm kind of a weird. I mean, I love movies, so I love listening to movie scores. Yeah.
I'm there, right? I'm there.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun to make one, and I guess that was a great part of it. And over the summer, so in May we were going for the festivals. We're still cutting the movie. We know the festivals we want to. There's about 10 that we're aiming at. So a bunch of the big ones, some of which I named, and then kind of a collection of, I'll say, like upper mid tier. And at the time, I was still thinking we got to release before the election. I don't care about these festivals that are sort of after that. And also, I'm aiming for some of these big ones, but it's a long shot. How much money are we really going to, it's already cost a bunch of money. How much are we going to throw at these festivals? Yeah. I don't know. And I guess I just didn't have a high opinion of sort of the middle tier festivals. I've over the years, I've known a lot of friends who have gotten into those, and they love putting the laurel leaves on their posters and everything. But, I don't want to throw any festival under the bus.
It's a gold star.
Yeah, it's a gold star.
Yeah.
I don't know how much anyone really cares. We can get into it because I feel of two ways about it, but just
let's get into it.
Okay, you want to? I can digress. Right now. I mean, it's jumping ahead a little bit, but basically, I mean, I do wish a little bit maybe that I had tried for some of the more mid-tier. It was actually on Reddit, another filmmaker saying that they had gotten written up in Hollywood Reporter because they were in one of these, lesser known but real festivals. And I just sort of...
How do you know what's mid-tier? How do you know?
Well, it's big tier, right? I mean, so I start there. Like, everybody knows Sundance, right? So Sundance is sort of like the North Star. It's the godhead of that, under which everything else sort of falls. Then there's Toronto and these others. I'll say a big part of this was simultaneously with the film festival, we reached out to a sales agent. I think he calls himself a sales agent. I mean, I don't know. He's great. And he, Glenn Reynolds at Circus Road, and this is his thing, is sort of getting distribution deals for small indie movies. So someone to think about for anyone who's going down this path. I think he's been great. And he'll watch whatever. Doesn't mean he'll accept it. But he watched our rough cut in May and loved it and was like, "Let's do it." So he was good. He was taking out to pitch to distributors. So we sort of had this like two-pronged approach. And with talking to him, he said, "There's only these festivals where buyers really like show up, essentially, And so that was kind of how I defined big. Like, okay, if the buyers are literally there and you can like make a sale there, that's a big festival. That's one you want to get into, right? And he was like, it's great to get into these other ones. There's just a different path for trying to sell them. It doesn't, it's not going to happen like at the festival more than likely. And just because we had such a tight budget and I thought tight release window, I thought I don't really want to bother with anything where buyers aren't at, or at least ones that if a buyer saw that it got in. So like, a major city festival, like, I don't know, Los Angeles, we submitted to Chicago, Philadelphia, some of these bigger ones around the country, Austin, which I think will get respect, but there's not going to be buyers there, according to Glenn. So we did that. And then it was just a long process getting the score done, getting the sound design done. Glenn sent out the rough cut to distributors. I now wonder, it's probably usually fine. It might just be me being paranoid. If someone was going down this path with like a small movie and they're a no one like me, or like, that not a known name,
Us.
I would, in retrospect, I'd probably wait until I had something pretty polished, because if your movie is an indie movie and it has Ryan Reynolds in it or whatever, they're gonna, whoever's a buyer or a distributor are gonna be like, oh, okay, well, the VFX might not be done in that scene, but obviously they're gonna finish the movie, But if it's not that, then they don't know. I mean, I put myself in their situation now, and I'm like, okay, it's this little movie, half the sound's not done. What if there is no sound for the second half of the movie? They just can't know. So anyway, we ended up, we went into the fall. We start trying to market the movie. I'm still thinking we're gonna release in October, but we do get a few offers in from distributors. And now I have to. So we worked under a SAG agreement, a micro budget agreement. That's pretty new. And I would say I would recommend to anybody who wants to work with, SAG actors potentially who are, oh, sorry, that's my dog. If you heard that. If you want to work with SAG actors, you don't have a big budget. By not a big budget, I mean under $20,000. So tiny budget.
Yeah.
SAG has this new deal where it's really honestly more like a waiver. You don't have to do a lot of the SAG stuff, and it makes it much more doable to get the actors. And so I would recommend that they do that, but just know if you do want to distribute the movie, you are going to need to upgrade the deal to like the next highest, which I didn't really realize at the time. So we had to do this whole thing with SAG and, come up with some more money to pay the difference with the actors, because now we have to hit this SAG minimum for that agreement. I know I'm getting a little in the weeds, but just to
the weeds is where we want to go, because this is good information for people who are starting out.
Totally. And it's worth knowing. And look, their SAG is they can take a while to get back to you, but they can be very helpful, and all these forms are available on their website. So this is all like very doable. You can kind of wing it yourself. Although if you do it this way, if you want to make a movie for under 20K, you won't need to have the liaison you usually need. It frees you up, even though know that later on, if you want to distribute on something like Amazon, you're going to need to upgrade and have some money saved for that. And so we went, I was looking, we fielded some more offers, and I met with a couple of the distributors, and I really liked Linda at Indie Rights. And I was like, let's just do this. And we missed releasing before the election, but I'm of two minds about it now. I think people were so probably over saturated with stuff. It would have been lost anyway, maybe. I don't know. But it came out right before the new year. and now it's on Amazon, and it's going to be on, Tubi, Google, iTunes, the whole thing in the coming months. And
Nice.
so we went from script to distributed movie in a year. So all of 2024. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Like, that's super fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've heard of people coming out with a movie, I mean, even with A-listers in it, and it still takes a number of years before you even see it on screen or distribution or
Mhm.
something like that, for whatever reason. I mean, it could be reshoots and stuff, but that's
Oh, thank you.
congratulations. That's huge.
Yeah.
That is huge. What why did you want to direct it? Let me ask you
Okay.
that.
I did feel like I had a vision for it, and I guess, I think of myself as kind of a writer first and foremost, but I do like directing, and I do think of myself that way. I just never, I don't, directing is such a weird role, yeah, right? Like, I don't really know how one goes about doing that professionally without doing it with their own stuff, I guess, at least to start. And I just felt strongly about how I wanted this to look and how the performances to be. And the other truth is, part of the reason I could move so fast and um, kind of stick to what my vision was on the page was because I kept the team small, and I made things. I tried. I kept the budget as small as I could. And if you don't have sort of lots of people floating around giving you notes that may or may not help, and you got to depend on this director, and is his schedule open, or who knows. Yeah, I could just go for it, and there's just a lot of power in that. I would recommend that to anyone who's in this world, in this part of their career, or, they want to go for this. The more you can kind of take control over various aspects of it and just go for it, the better, I think. Especially if you feel like you have a strong vision for something, because that has a lot of gravity to it. It sort of just pulls people in. They kind of trust when you're making decisions, even if you're like, well, we'll see if that'll work inwardly, as if it's still in the service of the vision of the movie and people believe in that vision, then you can move quickly and you can make interesting things at the same time.
What about, because you have a buddy that you grew
Mhm.
up with, who's your cinematographer. How did you guys communicate and figure out the shots and everything like that? Was that more on his plate, on his lap? Did you just trust him, or is it something that you had a vision for? You had storyboards and everything?
I had a vision, but he also did, and it was pretty simpatico. We met a few times before the shoot dates to go over, like, okay, setups. Here's this big scene that's like 8 pages. Like, how are we going to do that? What's the overall style of the movie, right? Like, and we were giving each other kind of comps, like, ooh, like green grass, or here's this style of movie, we kind of want pieces of that. And what's the color scheme, which he was like cool blues, and I was like, yeah, I think like a more kind of blue angling, more blue-esque, a little bit black and white, very stark as well. I remember he sent me stuff like Margin Call, which I think is a great movie and has a look that we were trying to kind of reach for. We were using all sorts of, what would you say? Yeah, like pieces of stuff we like, and just trying to figure out the style based on that. And then, the truth is, once you're on set, it's like, what is it? No plan survives contact with the enemy. Like, once you're on set, I feel like a lot of this very dependent on kind of like how fast you can actually do all this. We ended up, a lot of it just turns into like, what can you practically do, and how can you try to keep the vision while also actually getting through the setups and the shots and stuff. Luckily, we were in one room, so one benefit of that is you can sort of light it overall in a way where it's pretty quick to do changes of angle or setup. There's not a lot of setups then, really. Like, it frees you up a bit. But he had the idea, or which I liked, of like staying tight on the main character and trying to make it as sort of claustrophobic as possible, and what he sees is what we see, that kind of thing, which I thought was great. But sometimes he would be like, we have all these setups, this is not going to work, like we don't have the time. But some of the best shots came
Yeah.
out of that because I would be like, okay, what can we do? And he would tell me what he could do, and I'd be like, well, that sounds great, let's just, if you say you can do it, and that's if you have
Yeah.
someone who's at that level where you can really trust it, what they're saying when they say let's go for it, I mean, it's hard to beat that you can, that's someone you can really depend on, and then you can take chances a little bit creatively.
That's awesome. What how big was your crew?
uh well, the actors, me, I mean, 12 people.
So everyone just pitched in as part of the crew.
No, we did, well, so we had no like grips, no PAs, we had one gaffer and his equipment.
Yeah.
And he basically did all the stuff that a gaffer, or well, yeah, I did what a gaffer would do, what a grip would do, or that kind of thing.
Okay.
And my wife helped with craft service, and yeah, and
That's why it went so fast. Honestly, I have been on sets where there's 20 people to 50 people, and I've been on sets where it's just the actors are
oh
the
wow,
crew,
yeah,
and it goes so much
Yeah.
faster when we're the
Yeah.
crew and we're acting. And I was in charge of craft services, and I was a lead. That worked
there's a
for
lot
me.
to say for that. Yeah,
So that's the indie world that
Yeah.
we live in, and I think and it's fine. I mean, it just goes so much faster. Let me ask you about editing. When did you, obviously, I know you have a vision, which is why you
Mhm.
directed it, which is probably why you edited, I
Mhm.
would assume. But how long have you been editing?
Since film school, but I'd always edited my own stuff,
Okay.
and then I had a job that a part of which was editing. I edited ads for them. Yeah,
Nice.
so
I want that job.
well, I mean, it was a small part of my job actually. It was a very strange job, which I can.
Yeah.
I was an analyst, a research analyst at the Parents Television Council, which is this like watchdog group that says there's too much violence on TV or whatever. So a lot of the job was actually watching TV and recording when someone shot someone or someone. Yeah, yeah. And then we would do these. I know, very very strange. I literally was paid to watch television. That was what I would tell people. Yeah,
Wow.
and but I mean, I was in the research department, and we would like come up with these research reports, some of which were pretty interesting. I mean, they had one that we did one that was like stats of violence against women in media, in TV shows from X date to X date. We're kind of the only people were the only people compiling that stuff. So some of that was interesting, and part of that job was, they were a nonprofit, they don't want to spend money on marketing, whatever. So, but they would want to have ads and things, and so me and my friend and who worked there would cut ads for them. But otherwise, I didn't. Yeah, it's funny. I did work as a PA in a couple post departments years ago, but I never really.
Yeah.
I worked on a bunch of reality shows, and honestly, looking at what those guys had to do, I was just like, I no. It looked very soul crushing. They got a lot. I mean, you can imagine kind of what editing some of these reality shows would be like, and so that didn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
But I do like editing. I mean, in a way, the story really comes together in the editing room, right? I mean, you're really up until then, you're just coming up with as much material as you can to kind of put together. And actually, I mean, because I knew I was going to edit it, I was thinking about that the whole time we were on set and directing. I would think as an editor, what do I need? Like, how do I, like, I know I can cut this if I at least have this and this. And then if we can get this and this and this, great. But I at least need this thing, And I think that really helps. I think for anyone who wants to direct, keeping in mind just what you need to edit, or what an editor will need, even if it's not you, is really powerful. And also helps because, just getting kind of basic coverage is boring, right? I mean, you can do that, but stuff will just look very TV, I think, if you do that. And TV's fine, but if we're making indie films, I think, you want to have a little more going on.
Yeah.
And if you can think of from the perspective of an editor while you're in there, I think it really helps.
And I see that you've edited 3 of your films too.
Yeah, I did a web series a
Shorts.
couple years ago. Well, more than a couple years ago now. And I also edited with a friend on a short film and my own short film. Yeah, I've worked on a couple short
Yeah.
films where I edited, and in a way, it's like writing to me. I mean, it's accessible because really you can just work on a laptop, and it is about putting together a
Hmm.
story. You know?
Now you're so let's go back to
Yeah.
screenwriting. Oh, first let me just say, so Outrage, you had a cast of five?
Uh,
A cast of
Cast
five.
of four with some voice actors. So only four actors actually on set.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
and then we had the script supervisor play. She has a line in the beginning of the movie. She was great. But yeah, really, we'll say
Okay.
four, and then a couple voice actors. Yeah.
Wow. So you went from 1 year, wrote a script, all the way, which a feature, to editing it, directing it, even doing the sound design on it, the music for
Hmm.
it,
Well, Alex did the sound design,
and
but yeah.
then pitching it and sending
Hmm.
it out. I mean, that's fast.
It's very fast. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would recommend that for everybody. I do. I do. I'll say this though. I do. I've definitely known a lot of people who sort of get stuck in this doom loop of like, "Oh, I could always make it better. I could. And you sort of sit on a thing, and I do think there's a lot of power in just kind of like going for it. I think it gets easy
Yeah.
to, I've known, I've had friends who they get nervous about other people seeing the thing after some amount of time. They get a little precious about it. I think it makes sense in a way to just like move fast and get it out there and get on to the next project. At the same time, I mean,
Yeah.
you don't want to rush. Sometimes I was worried we were like rushing things, or I knew that I was potentially rushing other people and they were getting a little frustrated maybe. The way I could do that with this without having anything kind of come apart was everybody understood why it made sense to try to get it out so fast, with it being an election year. I mean, I
Mm,
kept saying to people like,
sure.
it's like we have a Christmas movie, like we got to get it out for Christmas.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in retrospect, maybe that wasn't quite true, but there were pros and cons to moving super fast. I think if you can do it, it's worth going for, because it's just nice to it gives something momentum. You keep momentum. I guess that's really the thing. If you lose that momentum, then you might feel differently about this and that. You start second guessing things, and maybe it never goes anywhere.
I've been part of those friends.
Yeah, I think we all have. We know. Yeah, yeah,
Where it doesn't come out, and then I think I just saw something that I did like 5 years ago, and I'm like, oh,
uh,
it's now coming
yeah.
out. Okay.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've been involved in that stuff too. Yeah.
So let's talk about screenwriting. What themes or messages do you find yourself returning to your screenplays, and why do they resonate with you?
Wow. Um, Themes and yeah, I you know
Uh,
I like I like the mythical, I guess, but in a kind of modern way. Like I really like science fiction for that reason, because it has a mythic
mhm.
quality, but it's very sort of about today and now, or the future, which is always interesting. And I like also kind of, how do people confront evil? Really, I think is a very interesting. Um,
You mean like horror?
no, I mean, well, maybe I don't. Horror. I mean, my friend Alex has been trying to get me more into horror. There are horror movies I like. I mean, Alien, the first one, is a horror movie. So like cosmic horror,
Yeah.
I like.
Yeah.
I guess things with a philosophical bent, but evil, I would say more like human kind of foibles. Like human evil, like what people are willing to do for a cause, or because they think it'll help their family, or there's a good, countless reasons for why people might do questionable things, and just how do others react. Exploring that within a different story, different context, I think is just fascinating. Like I think anything that does that well and truthfully is immediately interesting to watch or, get something from. Um, but I also stick to I like topical things. And I guess if I look at my own work, I usually, I have I do sort of revolve around themes of like, how do you know what you know? Like in Outrage, there's a lot of sort of manipulation going on of the people out there, but also of everyone in the room, and people think they know things, but how do they how do they deal with um, uncertainty, basically, even though they have strong feelings about this or that thing, right? And a lot of what I've written over the years has that quality too. But yeah, I mean, I would say some combination of all of that. Yeah, thematically, what's true, like how do people handle evil? How do people sort of, you know, deal with these things in a pretty crazy world that's only getting kind of more bewildering?
I'm fascinated because you have brought up sci-fi several times, but yet the film that's out there.
Yeah.
Is
yeah. It is, although, yeah. No, totally true. Fair. Guilty. It's political I would say it's about politics, but it doesn't pick a side, right? It's sort of just exploring what I think is sadly not sci-fi enough, like would have been sci-fi just a couple years ago, but the ability to kind of manipulate information and in images and video and stuff, that's really more what it's about, and how people use that to various ends.
I was saying political.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, I just, for anyone who's watching, I just want to clarify. Yeah, I'm not like picking. I'm not like, it's not a crazy partisan movie or something. Yeah,
you're like, it's not. No, but but I think the thing that I find fascinating is that it's not, you're drawn so much to this one genre, but you made this other genre to a certain degree. And so the question I have is, well, are you going to make something in the sci-fi realm? I mean, obviously you're writing it.
Yeah.
Obviously you've written stories, I'm sure. What caused you to go down this path for this story versus anything else that you've
I think it was just the seed of the idea hit me a certain way, and it was just a very modern. I do write sci-fi, but I've written historical stuff. So I wrote a script about the beginning of the oil industry in Western Pennsylvania. So it's historical, but going along, the sci-fi thing is sort of fit under this overarching umbrella of like the mythical meeting kind of the modern, you could say, right? So that to me, because the beginning of the oil industry, there's all these sort of mythic figures battling over who's going to control the future of what turns out to be kind of the world, and so there is this mythic quality to it. And it's actually, oil is this, it's sort of it's a very we don't think of it this way, but it is very like technological. It was sort of the first big tech boom in America. And similar to now, there were these giant monopolies that sort of controlled everything. And anyway, but I do write sci-fi. Like you mentioned at the beginning, I've written short stories. I had one published with a friend in Clark's World. So I write like short stories, and I, might get into writing novels and stuff. And that I do lean very sci-fi, but then with movies, TV, I do sort of a lot of things. It can be modern with a kind of espionage, political kind of, but without picking a side element to it.
I love those stories.
Yeah. Or like historical, or straight. I wrote a script. I talked to an agent who told me I should write a script, a sci-fi action thriller, and not care about the budget. So I did, and nobody cared about it, but it was a lot of fun to write. So I have this crazy sci-fi thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So I know it seems like it's all over the board, and that's why I was taking so much time to think when you asked a great question, which was about like what theme, and I'm trying, that I all of these things do fit under kind of one interest in, the mythic and sort of deep aspects of human character. You know,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. What did you when you wrote Outrage? Did you think about the budget?
I did. I mean, I thought so. I I thought like I'm going to do this for $1,000 with an iPhone, But I did. I kept it in
Yeah.
mind. I mean, part of what I did keep. I didn't know exactly what this or that would cost or like what deal I could get, but I figured camera. This won't be a movie that requires a red camera or something. We can, it'll look good on something smaller because it's so contained. And just being a writer for a long time, I just knew having limiting locations, limiting setups. I knew like where cost usually goes. It's like,
Yeah.
lighting, moving multiple, having to pay for locations, moving to them. If you need to like get permits, that sucks. Costs a bunch of
Yeah,
money. Got to deal
it
with a lot of
does.
stuff. And then post. Usually, if you're paying an editor, you're paying a composer, these things add up. And a lot of the time, in my experience, people sort of forget about post because they just want to get the thing made, right? And I understand that. But then you end up using all this money in production and you're like, you've got $5 to do what
Yeah.
is really even more of the work, which is putting it all together in a way anyone wants to watch it. So I did have it in mind, but I just sort of knew the basics of the story meant it would be shootable for very cheap. And then I just figured I knew Alex, I knew he'd be, or I talked to him about it. He was into it. He would do the sound design and I could handle a lot of the rest of it. And then certain things, color timing. I mean, Dylan talked about doing it, but he's not, he didn't really love it. And he had other jobs and he recommended someone. I talked to that person. Color timing is expensive. And, the most this person could do to work with me was basically, it would have cost me the budget of the whole movie just to, it's expensive.
Yeah.
So again, I guess in the spirit of, just go for it. You can learn this. If someone can do it, you can do it. I took a crash course in color timing and just color timed it myself, which on
Yeah.
this movie, if it was a different kind of movie, I mean, I think what I was keeping in mind was that I never wanted to do something that would kind of work against the spirit of the movie. So if this was like, I mean, the movie that comes to mind is like Pleasantville for some reason. But if it was a movie where the color is like really important,
Right.
I am not the guy. Like I would have then had to put money into getting a real colorist because like that's clearly there's like artistry there beyond just sort of technical know-how and everything, right? And it's important to the story. But with Outrage, we knew what the color was, the bluish with kind of a black and white kind of feel and everything. But it was simple and it was something that I could do decently enough, fairly well enough to kind of just do it myself. I hope. I think it came through. And I think coming at things from that perspective keeps you on the straight and narrow instead of kind of biting off more than you could chew. And then also, yeah, the earlier you can think about such things when you're writing, the better. I wasn't thinking about the color when I was writing, but at the same time, I was writing something that it wasn't like integral to the story. Like if you're doing a movie where the style is very important and the color is very important, then I think you have to keep that front and center and think about that from the beginning. I just didn't. That wasn't the case with this movie.
Sure. What about
Mm-hmm.
distribution? At what point in your mind go, oh, this could be distributed? We can get representation. We can go
Yeah.
out and sell it. What part does that start from the beginning? Are you beginning with the end in mind, or are you just like, oh, this could happen?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, no, totally. I had it in mind from the very beginning. I had one person I met with
Nice.
who was like, why not just make this a short film? And I was like, well, first of all, I mean, I think it works as a feature. So that's kind of how I see it. It's a feature. But also, I've made short films. I think short films are great, especially when you're like coming up and you need to make something, get experience, learn sort of how to make where budget goes, what you feel comfortable with, not comfortable with. But the truth is, you're not going to make any money on a short film. I mean, the vast majority of the time, it's not going to happen. And I wanted to do something that I felt like had real commercial prospects if I did it well. And that, the average person would maybe want to watch. Short films, other film lovers, your friends, they might watch it. People in the movie will watch it. And especially in the beginning, there's something really gratifying about that. I do recommend doing that when you're starting out. But at a certain point, there's just it's hard to spend money yet again thinking like, well, that's gone. Yeah, like especially when it's your money.
Right.
But you're not going to get any investors to do.
You got a gold
Yeah,
star.
yeah. Again, you got the gold star, and maybe you get it in some festivals and you've got the leaves and everything. But look, it's sort of like in the literary world, short stories. There's these magazines, you can go read them, but the vast majority of people read novels, and same in film. People like the feature, right? So unless you're sort of doing a short film as like a pitch for a big thing, that has commercial sense. I think that's sort of a different thing. If I did have in mind, like, I want to sell this. Like, I want to be able to have this on a place where people can buy and rent it. And, the average person would maybe want to watch it. The average, just like film lover would maybe want to check it out. That was, I was thinking about that from the get-go.
Okay. So we should all change our mind shift, because I think a lot of us indie people are like, oh, let's just make a short film. And I've seen people make a dozen short films, but I've also see people that make like 3 short films and they go to the feature. And it just depends on, I guess it's that faith of taking that jump and going, okay, here we go. And then
obviously, yeah.
But that's always
that's
the
a
big
huge one.
Let me ask you about, as a screenwriter, what kind of tips or thoughts can you give on making dialogue into a film? Because I know, story is everything, but sometimes, like, I'll watch stuff that's on Prime or Amazon or whatever, mainstream, and you're like, why are they saying this?
Totally.
What's the point? I would never say that in real life.
Yeah.
That type of thing. What are some of the things that you can give us some feedback?
That's a good question. I mean, I would say, I think one thing, if you want to write good dialogue, is just to, you watch movies with good dialogue, but also read books, like read a lot of books. Like, there's a lot of great writers writing, great dialogue in books, and you get a feel for that. But I think there is fun. I mean, I've seen Aaron Sorkin say that there's something musical about, and he's like a great dialogue writer, obviously. So this stood out to me, that there is something sort of lyrical or musical in how he does it. That's how he approaches it. I think there is something to be said for that. And I guess my approach, because that's, you either have an ear for that maybe, or you don't, I don't know. But one way that I find can help anyone is just like, be a minimalist about dialogue. Like, I think the bigger the idea and the shorter amount of words, the better. Like, or just the shorter amount of words, the better, because one thing I'll catch myself doing all the time, and I'll like edit as I'm going, is I'll like kind of repeat the character says the same thing again, but in a different way, but in just the next line. Or there's sort of these filler words that I sort of just put in there because I'm moving, it came naturally in the moment, but then you reread it and you're like, oh, that's, he could say this in 2 words and I had him say it in like 4 lines, So the more you can do to come at it that way and sort of cut, I think the better. Like, it makes things move faster. It's punchier. And I think too, when dialogue's really good, it makes you think, it makes you wonder about the character's inner thoughts and motivations, rather than sort of just like throwing it all out, even beyond just exposition. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The more you can kind of keep, they're hiding something from whoever else. They're also hiding something perhaps from themselves, that kind, like, the more terse the dialogue, I think usually the more that comes through to an audience, and the better the dialogue seems. So I think, I mean, my personal approach is try to be as minimalistic as possible.
Good
Yeah,
tip.
well, thanks. I hope so.
What's what has there ever been like the most difficult scene that you've ever written? And if there was, what made it the most
Oh
challenging?
man. Well, usually it's just I don't know if there's like there's just scenes where you're like, man, this sucks. And I don't know what's wrong. Like that's there's a lot of that. Yeah, most difficult. Yeah, I'd have to think about that. Um hmm. Yeah.
We can
Yeah,
move
we could
on.
let me see if I
Let's
can
see if it
think of
comes back.
something. I'm like thinking through
That's
all
why I
these
edit
projects
these.
I've done. I mean, there's ones where I guess I feel like I might be biting off more than I could chew. And so I'm sort of nervous about this feeling like there's big things going on, right? And sort of things that can be really touchy. So I need to handle it very well. Um, so that would be probably, that would be a spot. Like I have this limited series um, about, I mean, it's made up, but it's about basically Japanese war crimes in World War II and people who survived after, and this guy hiring Nazi hunters to try and get them. So that's all made up, but the war crimes are real, right? So, dealing with that in a way that's not kind of, you got to be delicate in a way with that. So you want to do it
Why?
justice.
Tell me why though. Like why? Is it because you don't want to offend somebody? Or is it the fact that that's the only thing I think.
Well, no, I mean, offending people, I don't really care if I offend people. I feel like if you're a
Okay.
writer, you don't
Yeah.
want to care too much about that. I mean, there's a limit. I don't do things just to offend
But if
people,
it's
but I'm not gonna.
but it's
Mhm.
fiction. I mean, look at
Yeah,
Tarantino, right? If it's fiction and it's your story, it's your
yeah.
idea, it's your creative process, then what is it that's makes you
I
hesitate?
guess it's just such a big topic. You don't want to. If you're Tarantino and you're doing a certain thing, right? I think
Yeah.
you can do it that way because it's such his style, and like Inglorious Bastards,
Yeah.
you couldn't do like I don't know if there was any of Schindler's List in like something esque like that in Inglorious Bastards. I don't think it would work. You know what I mean? Now it's sort of like, ooh, like this. This kind of, you can hint at it.
Yeah.
You can have Christoph Waltz being a bad dude, and sort of we know where people are going to go, but we're not seeing that. So I think these are, when you're dealing with something that huge, you want to be as kind of like real with it, and be. I say delicate. I just mean you don't want to like kind of. It's just such a cosmically big thing. You don't want to like kind of mishandle it. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Do you think that's because of the kind of the climate that we're in now? Cancel culture and people judging and the way people are like
yeah,
very sensitive.
they are. They are. I mean, no, I think as a writer, I think if you're going to treat subjects like that, I think for yourself, just for the quality of the work, you want to be. I mean, I think you should say what you want to say about it, but I think if you're going to say it well, you have to like treat it well, basically. I don't think there should be things that are like off limits, or I'm not saying you shouldn't say something that might offend some people. Um, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, if you want to be able to say to someone who's offended, like, yes, but I did it, you want to be able to, I think, defend why you made the choices you did. And the best basis you can have for that is to kind of be as authentic and truthful as possible. I mean, and good writing is when you're being as truthful as possible, I think. And so that's why worrying about offending people, if it makes you dishonest, the writing's going to be bad.
Right.
It's just going to be bad. But if you're it's similarly though dishonest to kind of be or to not know about what you're writing about. I guess like you should at least kind of know that and kind of have a real perspective that is grounded in as much research and kind of understanding of the topic, especially when it's something like, if it's something like a Schindler's List, you know, you really better kind of know what you're talking about is kind of all I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of, I had the first short film I made. Cousin was at a film festival, and I wrote it, and I put in some racial tones in it
Mm-hmm.
against
Mm-hmm.
Asians because during the pandemic, that's Asians were being
Mm-hmm.
attacked. I heard stories about
Yeah,
it,
me
so I
too.
stuck it in there. And the head of the festival goes, "Yeah, they accepted it, but they were like
Mm-hmm.
hesitant because of
Yeah.
that." And I'm like, "But I wrote it, and it happened, and
Right.
that
No,
type of
that's
thing." And then
ridiculous.
later, the guy that was yelling at me with the racial slurs, he was so intimidated by it. I'm like, just do it. He's a friend of mine, and I'm like, just do it. It's just we're acting.
Yeah.
It's not
Right.
real.
No, I mean,
So, but it's interesting, because it's like I want to be able to be free to write the story that I
yeah.
want to write. And I understand. It sounds like what you're saying is really just respect.
Yeah. It's just like
Respect,
knowing what you're talking
right?
about is kind of what I'm saying, and making sure you
Yeah.
knowing what you're talking about, and that you have a reason to have a perspective on this that other people might not have thought about, right? Something that's interesting. If it offends somebody, your perspective, but it's grounded in that, then who cares? I mean, that sounds just silly. I don't know. I don't know the festival or anything, but yeah, I agree. Yeah. They shouldn't feel that way about such a
How do
thing.
you? Right. I mean, I've seen
I mean,
worse.
I've read about way worse, so yeah. Totally.
Yeah. How do you decide with all your ideas and all the things that you've written in the past, how do you know when something's worth developing into a screenplay, a full screenplay?
Man, another great question. I've been kind of learning that as best I can as I go. I think sometimes I was reading this. I've been reading the Rick Rubin book on creativity. I don't know if you know this book. I think it's called On Creativity, actually.
I don't read.
Yeah.
I need to read. You're reminding me I need to read.
I mean, that's what a writer will do, is just scold you on not reading enough. But
it's good advice, though. I mean,
this book is great. It's just sort of a general, like, across any creative pursuit sort of method and how to think about things. Anyway, he talks about sort of this. I think it's got some truth in it, but could be somewhat arbitrary. Like experimenters versus like finishers, like people who sort of really sort of tinker and go, ooh, they're trying this and that and stuff. And then people who just sort of go for a thing and finish it. I think I am definitely in the finisher camp. That's not always good though, because how do I pick them? I sort of just, for a long time, it was just, this is what I just like this for the right now. And then I will finish something and move on to the next thing. And then not always kind of I finished it, but I didn't maybe let it breathe enough or experiment enough, is kind of how I'm thinking about it now. But I try at this point to think about, especially when it's a movie, do I want to make it? So do I have some sort of, because if I'm writing the script, I like the story on some level, but do I have some particular vision for how this should look on screen or be done that makes me want to, like, it gets me excited about directing it? So there's that element. If it is something that I would want to do myself, then now I think I sort of put on the producer hat a bit, and I'm like, okay, it needs to be something I can actually make, right? Because I'm going to actually want to make this. And I got to assume that there's no cigar smoking studio exec who's going to give me the money for this. So, the tighter the budget is, the better. The more I can kind of explain why this should be in there, the better. And if you can have, great roles to appeal to great actors, great. Yeah, obviously, you should do that. And I start thinking about that element of it. If I don't think I necessarily need to make it, then I just start thinking about, okay, it's a similar producer hat, I guess, but a little different, because I think, okay, what's the marketability? Like, essentially, I have to figure I'm going to pitch this thing to somebody. So what's the demo? What's the hook for, there's all this sort of Hollywoodese kind of thinking, you got to, what's the log line? You should come at things maybe from a log line perspective, just writing wise anyway, but you have to think like, okay, what's the elevator pitch? What's going to get someone excited in this thing? Yeah. And I guess I judge the more that I think I have to feel excited, and I have to think that there's a place for this to go. Because, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this, especially when you're starting. It's like, you don't know what you're good at yet. You don't know what excites you maybe. So you work on like all sorts of different things. And I think that's great. I think you should. But, if you want to get to a point where you're really committing, right, and you also want to try and make a living on some level, at least something from this, I think keeping in mind the marketability and how much can it be done when you're picking a project is important. So it's sort of there's a Venn diagram here where all these things have to kind of come together, and then I'm like, okay, let's do it. So Outrage just fit it all. I can shoot it. I think it's going to be marketable. I have a vision. I'm excited about it. And, it'll be my first feature. I'm super excited to have that, do that. And so that was like, it was a no brainer, really. Yeah.
Screenplays. If you have a screenplay and you feel like it's not marketable, do you just put it on the back shelf and then bring it out later when you think it is?
Ultimately, I have like a, kind of giant backlog, but just on a Google Drive, and you just learn over the years a little bit. And then sometimes, it's just bad luck or whatever. Part of the power in kind of making your own stuff is that you're not beholden to this other layer between you and an audience that is what execs are, or just all this machinery that's been built, right? Because they have their own tastes and their own ideas about, what's going to work and what's not going to work. And for whatever reason, they might like this thing, but not this thing, even though they're in the same vein, or, you're just at the mercy of their kind of capricious whims. So the more you can do things on your own, just the more control you have over your own destiny, I guess,
What about, you said you had some screenplays optioned. What does that involve? Do you have to have an agent?
So I've never had an agent. I've had 4 managers. To be honest, a couple of them were good, or at least they put in some kind of effort. But most of the time, it's you. You're out there, kind of, you're marketing yourself, you're pushing, you're getting the projects out there, you're pitching. And in my experience, a lot of these people come on when they smell money is starting to perhaps be on the table, right? They're showing up because, and a manager's not really going to negotiate for you. That's what an agent is for, or a lawyer. But they can hook you up with those people. And anyway, it's a weird process, and it's kind of only getting weirder. So it does involve a lot of marketing yourself anyway. And so I think it just goes back to me, and my motivation, a lot of it is just to kind of take more control, because you sort of de facto have a lot of control whether you like it or not. If I've been peddling scripts for a long time, with, I've had a couple options, but you're still at the mercy of who options it, and whatever, and their sensibilities might not align with yours, and then you have to go and try and together pitch to this other bigger entity. It just gets wild. And as a writer, it feels great when someone likes your thing enough to take that chance, but you do lose some measure of creative control, and if you do value that, then the more you can kind of create on your own, the more you maintain that control, you know?
And I mean, it worked. He made a feature. I think there's a lot of writers out there who are, they're in that mindset of I have to have an agent. I got to get an agent, or I got to get a manager, or I got to get representation so I can move forward, and that's what's holding me back. But it sounds like from your experience, which is, I mean, you have a lot of experience, 30 years,
15.
But from I know that's just so funny just to say it. For your experience, though, I mean that it shines, right? I mean that's the thing that you're saying. It's just keep pushing forward.
Yeah,
it's all about control. And I think the one thing that brings to my mind is a lot of people. You'll find writers who they submit a script. The script goes to the director films it the way they want it. There's rewrites, there's changes, and when the movie's done, the screenplay writer's like, "This is not what I wanted. Yeah. This is totally out of context of what I wanted to write."
And there can be all sorts of, I've heard all sorts of horror stories about, people getting booted off their own project, or, I don't know. People have heard these are floating around and are immortal. I don't know. They go back decades, right? People have always talked about this stuff. Yeah. I mean, writing, if you're a screenwriter and you really hone it, I would recommend, my recommendation is, don't think that getting a rep is going to it's very validating. And I think, and it seems just like this obvious goalpost of boom, now I'm in, But the truth, in my experience anyway, often, especially when you're starting out, which honestly, I would consider myself still starting out, you're going to have to do 80% at least of the work anyway. And so if you're a screenwriter, you do have this secret power, people want, or this special power. It's hopefully not secret. That people want good stories, that's everybody who's looking for interesting things to work on. And so if you can write that thing, if you feel confident about doing that, the more you can kind of teach yourself how to do this thing or that thing and kind of patch together these different skills so that you bring more to the table as well. The more control you'll have over your own project, the more you can kind of bring people in and take chances. And really, it's that, or trying to sell your wares around Hollywood or whatever, try to pitch people on giving you money. When you don't have a lot of experience, it's hard. It's funny. Look, it's filled with people that want these stories and everything, but the money people don't really like reading scripts. They like watching a thing, right?
Yeah.
And they don't know how to always judge. They don't trust their own taste enough, So you're at the mercy of a lot of forces that are out of your control, and that can just get really dispiriting. It turns into this kind of wild roller coaster where you're I will just never do this again, and then you're well, but this is really all I want to do, so how do I do this? And then, I did this for years, and you'll send a contest and you get maybe foreign contests, but maybe that does something for you, maybe not. There's a little blip. You're ooh, great. You get some kind of deal. Anyway, I think the more you can kind of teach yourself these other skills and put them to use and have writing, if you're a screenwriter and have writing as a foundation, the better, because then you can always make your own material, or it makes it much more doable.
And I think the fact that you direct also, that's solid right there. When you're writing your own content, you're filming it, you're editing it, it's coming out the way you envisioned it. No one's going to change it. No one's going to steal it. Do you have any concerns about people stealing your work or your ideas?
My friend Neil told me that he found out they're already there's pirate sites with outrage on it already. It's what are you going to do? I think that's just 2025, I guess I'm flattered people want to pirate it. You've made it when they're pirating your stuff, I guess. That's
What about screenplays that haven't been made into anything? Are you afraid, when you enter a contest, is there any kind of hesitation of them taking the content and going?
No, maybe some of that goes on. In fact, it probably does on some level, but the truth is an idea is just an idea, and the script, I think you have to put yourself out there. You have to get your work out there. And, you know, I wouldn't be, it's a lot more work actually to kind of like just wholesale steal something from somebody, or even if they lift stuff from your script. I mean, I don't know. I write another script that's great too. And yeah, I just don't think it's not a good idea to be in that mindset, I think. And it's always, it's super nebulous. And like, you know, there's people who do get litigious and try to sue, but it's silly. And that's fairly rare. And like, the truth is if you're worried about someone stealing your idea, I mean, ideas are not copyrightable for that for a reason, you know? I mean, and there's this story that I go back to in this situation when I talk to people about it. I guess, so I read somewhere that when Vince Gilligan was pitching Breaking Bad, he heard from at least one of the networks that he pitched to that, this is just like this other thing that someone pitched. Like, it was just like it. And he was like, oh my God, you know, of course, terrible, you know, this is over. And of course it wasn't over, and Breaking Bad is this legendary show. And the other thing was Weeds, which, like, you could see if you remember Weeds. I mean, it's been years now since that was out, but it was a Showtime show about a mom who sells weed. Anyway, I could see how that pitch would sound very similar to the Breaking Bad pitch.
Sure.
Sometimes these ideas are just sort of floating, you know, whatever, it's in the zeitgeist. Someone sort of has something that's like your thing. I mean, I just wouldn't worry about people stealing your stuff. It's more about like, what perspective do you bring to, how are you saying this thing? Like, what's your story? What makes this take on it special, right? Rather than worrying about sort of the overall kind of premise, you know?
Mm-hmm. Good advice. What is the most constructive criticism that you've ever received in your career as a screenwriter or filmmaker?
Wow. Constructive criticism. I don't know if there's any like one thing. I think just over the years, just sort of people being like, okay, this has this quality that we like, but you could work on that, you know, and trying to stick with those people rather than anyone who just criticizes based on, you know, what they would have done with it, or, you know, that, I don't know, that, you know, they don't have the right kind of spirit about it. Most constructive. Yeah, I think I've probably had so much criticism that it's like it's like a needle in a haystack, trying to pick out what would be the most constructive. I mean, there's ones that are more funny than not. I was in this, it was actually like for short story writing. So like literary writing, it's not screenwriting, but they had these big sci-fi writers as part of this workshop. And one of them, I was lamenting that I didn't think I was a very good short story writer. I thought I was more like a novel writer, but how could I be a better short story writer, you know? And what do I do? And his response was like, do you like money? And he was basically just saying like, don't worry about it. You know, like if you think you're better at novels, like do novels, you know, don't. And I guess that sticks out because it was funny. And on the surface, seemingly cynical, but not. I mean, he was basically saying like, don't sweat. You know, if you don't feel confident in this thing, you feel confident in that thing, then just do that thing. You know, and sometimes you can be in an environment where you feel like, but I should be good at this other thing, and that can just be a big distraction. Yeah,
that's good. What I'm just enjoying talking to you, but I know we got to wrap it up.
Oh no, man, so. I'll talk. I don't know. I'm here.
What kind of advice would you give to someone who wants to, get into the film industry, maybe a writer, to learn how to write? Someone who can't afford to go to film school.
Yeah.
You know, where does someone start?
I mean, I think, again, reading books, especially if you want to be a screenwriter. I mean, yeah, I know. It's a little bit, yeah. Look, I guess it's a little bit self-serving. It's, but like, you know, really, like overall, if you're going to have something interesting to say, I think you have to read interesting perspectives that already exist, you know? And especially if you want to get like a style, you know, try to approach reading like it's, I mean, yeah, like it's fun. I don't know. If you like writing, you would probably like to read already. And then I would say just do it. I mean, I think trial, especially, you know, film school these days, I don't even know. I think there is some value in learning kind of um, the the professional way a set should be run, but you know, there's a lot to be said now for just going for it. And I would say if you're a writer, try to put yourself. This goes to the last question too. Like try to put yourself out there as much as possible. Like I would say, YouTube is like great. You know, I mean, if you can write little things and get an audience on YouTube, more people are watching YouTube than anything else on their televisions, more than Netflix. So, like in a way, you're.
That's why I started a podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I would say do that. I think try to pick up at least one other skill, editing. If you're making YouTube videos, it makes sense to like edit, right? And you try to be friends with other people doing this, and maybe you can, you know, kind of, I can do this for you if you'll do this for me or whatever. And it helps to have outside opinion too. I mean, always seek out kind of reasonable perspectives on your work. I think, like, you know, you want to get notes on your work, but you want them to be good notes, like actionable, helpful, constructive, like you're saying. Seek that out. Don't worry about all the whatever. Someone doesn't like it because I've had I've had people say they didn't like my script because the title of the script started with the letter A. I mean, you'll literally just get really stupid. And that kind of stuff, you know, you just got to like, all right, well, I'm not going to you again. You know, that's what else can you do? And yeah, I think it's about being prolific, but also really into what you're writing. So that seems like it's counter purposes. I mean, that's why I had to really try to think of it. You want to put out as much as you can that you still really stand by and feel good about, you know? And it's about shots on goal. I mean, especially if you're just a screenwriter, like, or that's, I don't mean just as, but like, I don't mean that in a demeaning way, just like that's all you're doing, especially to start. You just want to be like getting your stuff. I know it's expensive, but try to get it into contests, get it out to people. The more shootable it is, the better. Try to keep in mind budget. If you can do something that's like contained, that's great. And stick to one or two genres that you really feel like you love, you know? If you're lucky and you do love horror, that's great because they're affordable movies to make. And at our level, you know, small indie stuff, horror movies make money. They're like a safe bet. So if you genuinely really like horror, get into that and write a bunch of horror shorts, whatever. Like, I think just doing it, I think especially, it can be dispiriting. And so you'll go, you know, there's periods where I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to, you know, I don't really feel like working on any of this. This seems like it's going nowhere. But it can also you can get nervous about, you know, people criticizing your work, but if it's good criticism, you should welcome it. And, you know, don't get dispirited, just sort of pivot. I mean, if the screenwriting kind of merry-go-round of halfway BS competitions and stuff is dispiriting, then, you know, just lean more into YouTube for a while or something. I think it's just about constantly doing it and trying to learn more.
How do you stay motivated? I mean, do you get to that point where you're like, I don't know what to write about, or do you keep a notebook that you just write down ideas that you have at your hand, or how do you keep that momentum?
I've done that. Because I have like all these ideas, and some of them are just very nascent. They're too unformed, but there's something I like about it. And I've tried to be like methodical and like, I'll lay all this out in a notebook and kind of like try to rank them by this and that, and it just sort of turns into a big mess. It's really just, I mean, staying motivated. You know, like I said, the truth is, it's been kind of a roller coaster. I mean, there's periods where I feel like, ooh, this could be the time. This one's finally going to hit, and I can focus on just this. And then, whatever, the executives at this channel didn't like it, so it didn't go. And oh well, back to the drawing board. And that can be dispiriting, but there's just nothing else I want to do. I mean, if you're passionate about this, it keeps you coming back. There was that documentary, like 12 years ago, called Seduced and Abandoned, that I think the director of it, or the guy who's in it, got canceled or something. I don't know, but whatever. It's a good movie. It's got Alec Baldwin in it. The whole premise of the thing is that they're pretending they're trying to sell a movie at Cannes, and you just get this inside look at how insane it is. And the whole, Seduced and Abandoned is that. Like, we're all seduced by this industry, by this creative life. Yeah. And then kind of along the way, at some points, it just abandons you. And like, there's nothing you can do about it. So I think my approach now is just to kind of find reasons to really love the ride anyway. I just like doing the work. And I think the more confident you get about it, the more you feel that way. And then it's not about validation from some outside force or anything else. It's just about trying to make it so this can be your life and you're happy about it. And it's about focusing on the work.
Yeah. Although the gold stars do help.
Yeah. I mean,
we do like them.
And when you're starting out, I mean, hey, anyone who's been more through the festivals than me can absolutely come in and just like, annihilate what I'm saying here if they want to, or they can at least try. I especially at different points in your career, I think it makes sense to get those gold stars. You don't have to put the weight of the world on it. I mean, I think actually, I mean, especially if you're trying to kind of like make something that you want to get out on platforms, Amazon doesn't even let you put the laurel leaves on the poster anymore. So yeah, when I found that out, I don't know. They have very strict, weird rules about what goes on a poster or not. And so, yeah, once I learned that,
that's half the marketing right there. You want to watch this because we won an award.
I know. I mean, maybe if it's Sundance, they put it on, but I don't know. But that's what I've learned is that they're moving away from that. And there's still reasons. Look, if you're starting out and you're making shorts and you'll meet people at film festivals, it will be validating, which is great. And you never know. I mean, maybe you learn about some grant you can get because you went to that festival and now you can make something else. I mean, it's a legitimate venue. I think if I have to, criticize my own, I have like a bias probably just because I've spent so much time submitting to screenplay contests, which are like their own. It's very similar to a film festival, It's just there's none of the glitz or glam about it. You just sort of learn your thing, made it this far, and that's it. Even if you make it pretty far, it's like if you didn't win the grand prize, anyway. And even that doesn't necessarily do it for you. So I think I just got jaded with that whole competition aspect, and I just want to go straight to the if I'm going to compete, I at least want to compete with the people buying. That was my. Makes sense. I mean, that's just where I'm at now. But I keep going back to especially if you're starting out, absolutely the festivals make sense. And even for Outrage, part of me kind of wishes that we had explored a different strategy with some of the festivals. I think we could have got, if we had just brought the aim down a little bit for some of the others, still maybe submitted to Venice and stuff. If we had just lowered to okay, what are some, like they do for colleges, what are ones we know we can get into, that might have helped, right? Instead we aimed for Harvard and Yale, right off the bat. And,
still made something.
Oh no, totally. I just mean from the festival perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. What, I think that's really fascinating because you have the experience. Did you go to the festivals that you entered?
No. I've been to, I've had scripts go pretty far in the Austin Film Festival screenplay contest. And so after like a couple years of that, I was like, well, I should just go to this film festival. So that's really the only one I've ever been to. And that was in 2018. So pre-COVID. It was a great time. I had fun. Yeah. And I would have loved if Outrage could have gotten into that. But no, I didn't go to any of the ones that we submitted to and didn't get into. But, you know.
That's part of the dream, I think, that my wife and I have is, you know, let's enter into a festival and then just go visit.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Oh, totally.
You know,
I mean,
network and
Venice?
see what it's like. Yeah. That's right on.
Totally. Yes.
Good business. Yeah. Yeah.
Huge business expense.
Brady, what's next? Anything you're working on now or in the near future?
Yeah. So I have one script that I've had done for a while that I think I'm going to start trying to get some interest in from actors. I'll say what I'm working on next, and then I'll kind of come back to that. But so that one's done, and then I'm currently writing another one with budget in mind that I want to shoot myself, and has some roles in it that I think are great. And here's something that I do think is worth bringing up for any indie audience. I used to think, probably because I'm a writer and agents are like these mythical thing, you know, they don't care about you at all. They'll never talk to you. I thought talent reps would be the same way, but they are not. I don't know if this was true pre-strike, but certainly now, or at least a year ago, I approached managers for like, you know, fairly decent, fairly big names. I mean, not like huge names, but like, you know, especially at this level. I mean, people you would recognize on some level, like, you know, side characters in big shows and stuff. And their reps were very responsive, and they read the script, and some of them were pretty interested.
Wow.
And I think if you're trying to get a project off the ground, even if you think it's like super small, it might be worth just taking a shot. If the script is really good, or there's like a role in there that you really think this person could fit in that role, they might feel that way too. You know, they might be looking for something that can be a standout project for them, you know, especially if they're feeling like they're sort of trapped in whatever, you know, maybe they're like a side character on this show and they've been on that show for like however long, right? And it's successful, but they're just the side character, you know, and you present them with, okay, it's a tiny movie, but we have this awesome role for you as like the lead in this movie, you know. That can be appealing. You don't know. Like they might be open to that, and their reps, unlike a lot of other aspects of Hollywood, will probably bring them that project, you know, at least show it to them. And that might be all you need. So I'm hoping to do that with these two projects, is kind of really figure out who I would like to go to and, you know, make my case for why I think they'd be great in the project and see if they're interested. And, I recommend that to anyone who's doing this.
How can you afford it? Is it a just standard SAG rate?
Well, the hope would be that, no, I don't have any money. Not yet. So the way I'm approaching this, and anyone who has more experience with financing a movie is welcome to comment, email me, whatever. I'm still learning this, but I think if I can get, you know, a pretty decent name or a couple attached to either or both, with that interest from them, or, you know, even just them saying like, yes, I'll do it. Now I can go to financiers and be like, hey, so-and-so wants to be in this movie, you know? And then all of a sudden now it's kind of a bankable project, more so than it was. And if you can have like a background yourself where, you know, like I just made Outrage, so now I've directed a feature. It's not insane for me to, you know what I mean? Kind of be like, okay, you know, I can show you I've made it. I've made one. Exactly. It's just sort of, exactly. Yes. And, you know, maybe if I've watched interviews with people saying they also go to distributors to see if they can get interest from distributors before they even so that they can go to a financier and say like, oh, this distributor says they'll take this movie. You know, if you think of it, you're going to investors, and if you are going to investors, and the way an investor thinks is, how am I going to get my money back? You know, so the more you can kind of guarantee that, seemingly, the better. If you can have names in it, if you seem like a safe bet because you have a background that speaks to what you're doing, there's already some way to get it out there. It's not risky in that way. You start to kind of put together an appealing package for anyone who's, interested in risking their money on movies. And then there's a whole other path if you're making short films or documentaries. I mean, if you can get grant money, obviously that's amazing. I don't really write anything that is eligible. I have looked, but that's sort of its own different world, a little bit adjacent but different.
What's your favorite screenwriting tech or filmmaking technology? Or hardware, software? Like, what do you use? What do you use?
Well, I used to use Final Draft like everybody, and like Final Draft is fine. But I started using this website called Writer Duet. Yeah, Writer Duet. So it's in one word. And I like it because I have multiple computers, and one of them is sort of this, like what I'm on right now is like, I mean, the camera's not great, but it's actually this like really souped up gaming laptop that I do the editing and all this stuff. So it's this huge thing, it's venting. It's got this giant fan. I can't really bring it to a coffee shop or anything. So I like that Writer Duet lets me sort of work with multiple computers for multiple places. And maybe Final Draft does that now. But when I made the switch a few years ago, I don't think it did. And Writer Duet's very easy to use. And there's like it's a freemium model. So you can start without paying any money. I used it for years without paying any money. So I would recommend that for writing. And then editing, I like Premiere, but that's because this will date myself hugely, but I when I was in film school, I learned on Final Cut 7. So that, it's like a long time ago.
That was like 30 years ago.
Let's keep that fantasy alive. Yeah. And Premiere is just like sort of in the spirit of old Final Cut 7. So I feel like very comfortable in it, but I've learned to use Resolve more and more. And for anyone who's starting, I would say, just because Adobe is expensive, Resolve is free basically, and like it works very differently, but worth learning. Lots of people use Resolve now, and the beauty of Resolve is like it sort of packs in all this stuff that I have Adobe for into one place. So I use After Effects as well. I used it on Outrage. That's a whole separate program. You got to pay for this whole suite from Amazon, and it's pricey. Resolve does it a different way, but does it just as well, and it's all kind of packed into the same software. So if you're starting out, I would say Resolve. And then, I don't know. I mean, I think, and could be controversial, I don't know. I think it's at least worth like familiarizing yourself with some of these new AI tools.
Yeah, that's the next question is what do you think about AI?
Yeah, I mean, it's very like new, so it's really hard to say. There's a lot of doom and gloom, and I kind of get that. At the same time, I think for anyone in the indie world, if you're sort of making your own stuff, it just opens up avenues for you because it makes things doable that just would have been way too much money. I mean, honestly, I used a little bit in Outrage because there's all these, I mean, to give it away a little bit. I don't know. Did you watch the movie yet or no? Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. I'll send you a screener or something. Yep. But you'll see in the movie when they're on computer screens and stuff, there's this whole election going on in the background. And I need images of the candidates. I need, images of different things going on. And stock images are not going to cut it. And I don't have the money to like get actors and, rent the Waldorf out and put all these, it's just insane. It would cost way too much. Yeah. So AI made this movie possible in that way because I could make these images and make them look pretty good, like realistic. And it costs like nothing, right? And in this case, I mean, I would say like no one's losing their job here because I was never in a million years going to pay any actor, to do this. It just made me able to make this movie. And I think there's all kinds of places where that's true. And even if you're against it, I mean, I think like as a writer, I think ChatGPT for the most part is like really mediocre, and I don't know, it's open to speculation whether or not it'll get that much better. If you're a writer, obviously, like you don't want to like replace what you do with this thing, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there's artists who feel that way about Midjourney. And so maybe they use ChatGPT because they don't care about. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I mean, I don't think the writing would be as good as what. In this case, Midjourney did an acceptable job. There are going to always be places, I think, where you want a talented artist rather than just whatever AI is going to give you. But that you can use AI for stuff that a talented artist, it would be overkill, but you still need it, and you need it to look at least pretty good. It can do that if you learn how to use it. And I think these tools are going to open up opportunities for people in our world that just don't. You're going to be able to punch way above your weight. I mean, this movie, like again, I just wouldn't have been able to make it even like 5 years ago. I couldn't have done it, just because the technology. It would have been outrageously expensive, and now I could make it for less than 20,000. So.
That's a great use case, because you're like, how am I going to find this? How am I going to film this? How am I going to get all these people? And you don't have a budget.
Yeah. I mean, it's
I'm like,
there was no money. That's right. And so people worry about Netflix and Amazon wanting to use it and cut jobs and stuff, and maybe they will. But actually, I think maybe they will. I mean, they're going to do whatever they think they can do, right? But I have a inverse opinion of it. I think more and more people are going to be able to make more interesting stuff without needing Netflix or Amazon. I mean, other than for distribution, and then who knows where that'll go in the coming years. It'll just like a lot of what I've been talking to you about is sort of how I took control in a sense, right? And this technology did help with that on some level. And so who was actually getting cut out were executives at these companies, because I didn't have to go to them, And so the more this becomes, a thing, and you can make interesting stuff that they would never greenlight, right? Or who knows, you'd have to go through some whole process, and you start with a horse and end with a camel and whatever.
Gatekeepers.
It's you don't need to do that anymore. And if this technology can help us do that, then I value it. Like I kind of view it as, cutting them out, not the other way around. But like anything else, it's sort of how you use it and how it progresses from here too. I mean, it's very unpredictable.
I've interviewed other screenwriters, and they say the same thing about ChatGPT, where you can have it analyze your outline and all that, but other than that, it's whatever it comes up with is not.
No, it's not usable on the. Yeah, I would never use it to like write a screenplay for sure, or even really to edit stuff. I think there's power in editing things yourself. If there's anything I've used it for, it's for like marketing, because it's halfway decent at least starting off with like some social media post you need or whatever. I mean. I don't necessarily love that stuff. If I can outsource some of the brainstorming to that and then sort of go from there, that's fine. And social media posts, I mean, you don't have to be Voltaire. It's going to be okay. But for anything that you're like artistically into, especially writing wise, I wouldn't recommend using it. Really, I mean, it's not only is it kind of mediocre, it's it's replacing you. You're kind of offloading the decisions to it, which is
it might work if someone's going to go, how do I write a screenplay? Like, what is the structure? Like, if they wanted instructions on how to learn how to write a screenplay.
Totally. Right? Well, then you're sort of just using it instead of Google, right? I mean, you could you could Google that and you would get instructions, and it'll maybe do a faster, better job of the same thing. I think that's perfectly acceptable. In fact, you could you could have it give you good structure guides, all sorts of things from various screenwriting books. I mean, it could be very useful in that way. Yeah.
Brady, what is the best way for people to reach out to you?
Well, the movie's on Amazon. You can put in Outrage 2024 into the Amazon Prime search bar, and it should pop right up.
And we're going to link that.
Yeah.
in the
Okay.
show
Great.
notes.
I'm starting this new YouTube channel. Yeah. The YouTube has its own email that I set up. So, and that is totally for like incoming, whatever, especially anything related to projects and stuff. It's thehouseazure@gmail.com. And, I'm on Twitter. That's kind of the social media that is front facing, I guess. I technically am on Facebook and Instagram, but I don't really use them, so except for marketing purposes. But I'm on Twitter. I'm at BNels #1 digit
Nice.
1.
I'll put it in the show notes.
And I think the movie's website is on there. There's a way to sign up for an email list on the website as well, and I respond to stuff.
Yep, we'll link all that in the show notes. Thank you, Brady. I appreciate your time coming on the Downing Cut.
Thanks, Joe. It's been awesome.